My fellow Decepticons, welcome back to another video. This one's going to be a special one. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to be a Decepticon, not just to us personally, but from our perspective across all the different continuities, because it's changed from continuity to continuity. And we're not going to go into every continuity in this video, but we're going to give an overarching feel of what that might mean or what it means to us from the last 35 years till now. And I hope you guys are ready for this. Starscream, why don't you say hello?
Hello.
Just kidding, don't bother them. Now, let's get right into this one. So, we were just watching a video on Energon where Starscream shows up and Megatron converts him to be a Decepticon. And he makes... why don't you tell them what he says?
Say my name. Say it again.
Yeah, so there's been some pretty comical takes on how people are made Decepticons. In some continuities, Starscream, remember our motto was a lot about programming. You know, you're just a Decepticon soldier whose programming has gone haywire.
In Armada, yeah. But I believe when the Autobots and Decepticons encounter Nemesis Prime, I think things started to kind of take a turn. When the Cybertronians were enveloped with a fraction of Unicron's power, I believe they started gaining their own individuality and their own independence. You can even notice how some of the characters started questioning their own actions, and the actions of others such as Megatron and Thrust, or that one time with Starscream and Hotshot. Even in the start of Energon, a lot of the characters seem to have developed their own free will unless they were captivated by Megatron's own will. So I think eventually too in Cybertron you start noticing their own free will even more, especially with characters like Starscream, who no longer seeks honor but power, and Wingsaber especially, who now seeks his own freedom instead of being just spare parts to Optimus Prime.
I think what Armada was trying to say was that the programming might be the base of their personality, but their experiences would develop them as individuals. Now, I want to talk about Starscream. Your take on being a Decepticon. You joined this group as an Autobot, is that correct?
Yeah, I did join the group as an Autobot, which is actually pretty ironic considering the character Starscream in War for Cybertron also was originally an Autobot. And when I first joined, it was on Fall of Cybertron, which is the sequel to that game. And I actually joined as the character Ultra Magnus.
Because he led the Wreckers.
And then several dramatic events such as the destruction of the Autobot group led to me becoming a Decepticon. And it led me to where I am now.
So you'd say your personality now kind of fits more into a mindset of now there had been some times where you had tried to go against me and my organization in the past. And that's how people started to say you were like Starscream. And not too long after that, just a few years ago, you took on the mantle of Starscream from Skywarp.
Yeah, I remember that all too well. My buddy Skywarp was actually Starscream before me, like you said. Then the day I became your second in command, you were just like, yeah, you're Starscream now. And I was like, we already have one though. And Skywarp told us he would give the name to me and no one else. So here I am in all my glory.
And a little bit of context was, I didn't say that out of the blue. Your favorite character growing up in Armada was Starscream. So you started to get into the characters and the Wreckers when you got that comic. But I'd like to talk a little bit about, I think, your journey into becoming a Decepticon, because I think you realize that just because you're on the Autobot team doesn't make you a good guy. The original Autobot division split off from our group, and it was a lot smaller than people thought it was. Now, when they split off, they had did so off of a lie. So once it had been exposed that everything that had happened was a lie and the Autobots made all this up and had done all this treachery, it was very ironic because none of the Decepticons had that problem. And that's what I want to get into is, what does it mean to be a Decepticon? Now, what it means to be a Decepticon to me is a lot of what is kind of covered in some of the current iterations of the comics over the last 13 to maybe even a little bit now in the new comics, but the last 13 years to now. And it talks about the political system and about not being deceived by the things we're told. And I look at just the world today, and you see all these different products and all of these different situations, and what you see on the media, who says who. And I mean, if you search something up on the internet, if you search up will using a refrigerator make me sick, I'm sure you can find plenty of convincing evidence, right? You'll see like there's 10 studies, yada, 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 from whoever is the competitor to refrigerator, right?
Right.
Or whatever brand it is. And then you can search, will a refrigerator make me healthier, right? Or even will French fries. Yeah, and you'll get the same results. So what I think of when I think of being a Decepticon is there is a more difficult path. And sometimes it requires you to be morally ambiguous. And what I mean by that is you have your set of values, but there may come a time where those values cannot be applied to that situation, right? Where, there's a family member who, family comes first. But if this family member is, siphoning money or intentionally hurting you, it's better to be able to say, listen, I will always be there to help you when you're willing to help yourself, right? Not just simply giving somebody something, right? Things are earned. Things are maybe even taken, right? Through sometimes more aggressive means, not like violence, but through making a political stance and not allowing anybody to say, hey, you're not allowed to think that, or you're not allowed to believe that. Now, I'm a big believer on having people be able to inform themselves to gather what they need to make their opinion. And what I respected a lot about Megatron was, even if he was wrong in some continuities, he was often doing it for a purpose, right? So like a Cybertron first mentality. Now, that might not be the best, but I do think that it's something that shows a character value. If you think of it from this perspective, if you were amongst the last 500 human beings fighting on a planet called Cybertron, and you knew that it was, we either steal all their resources or we all die, maybe you would do it, right? Maybe you would be willing to destroy another civilization to preserve the people, your home, whatever it is. Maybe you have a child or a daughter, but let me know in the comments. Do you believe that the Decepticons are just pure evil? Now, to me, I think they can be written that way, and sometimes that's a lot of fun, right? It is a fictional children's story, but Starscream, I wanted you to talk a little bit about. I know you like IDW and Tarn, right? And there was a point in the comics when they said that Tarn, I thought you'd be running around with an Autobot mask apologizing to everybody. And it talked a little bit about, that the Decepticon cause wasn't just Megatron. And why don't you talk a little bit about that if you'd like to get into it?
Tarn is definitely an interesting choice for an example, man. I strongly believe that his dedication was not to Megatron, but to the cause itself. He idolized Megatron and his teachings, but it was the teachings that made him into a Decepticon in the first place, which is why when Megatron defected in the comics, he sought out the founder of the movement to bring the movement itself the justice it deserved. When Tarn started out, he was known as an outlier named Demas, who had a unique power to destroy non-sentient machinery simply just by touching it. This led him to being recruited along with several other unique Cybertronians by Orion Pax in his scheme to steal a fake matrix of leadership. Around the time he learned to apply his powers from a distance, he also overheard Orion Pax recommending reading Megatron's works, who even went as far as calling it powerful stuff. I can only assume he listened and read them all too well. Having been subjected to a form of torture by the Senate himself for crossing them over his hatred of functionalism, we can only assume that his hatred of them lining up with Megatron's teachings led to his radicalism in the Decepticon movement. I think the pushing point for Tarn as well was the moment that Starscream murked the entire Senate.
Well, he abandoned his original teachings in
Right.
IDW, like not completely, but he used them as a founding principle. But in the comics, it shows Megatron throwing them into the police station sign, and that formed a Decepticon logo. Kind of corny, but what kind of to your point, Starscream, is that hearing about this message, this form over function. Right, that was the message of the Functionalist Council, and they said that it was form whatever you transformed into, that was your job. If you were a truck, you were a truck. If you were a car,
Or more
you were
like
a courier.
you were if you were a truck, it was more like you were a miner. Like it would determine where you were in society. Yeah.
So it was a caste system.
All likes and subscribes to this YouTube channel.
But sir, what about the other YouTubers?
Any further objections? Ram this video straight into the minds of our viewers.